The metal doors of the elevator slammed shut with a cold finality that made Madison Hayes flinch. 3 towering figures had blocked every possible exit, their eyes gleaming with predatory satisfaction as they watched the scholarship girl clutch her stack of thick textbooks, shrinking into the corner. "Going down?" Preston Whitmore sneered, his finger pressing the basement button where no security cameras could witness what happened next. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting menacing shadows across Nathan Cross and Jake Sullivan's faces as they slowly closed in. Madison pressed herself against the elevator corner, but strangely, her eyes showed no trace of fear. Instead, she began counting down silently. 10, 9, 8. They had no idea that in 30 seconds, all 3 would be face down on the floor with guns pointed at their heads. If you've ever been trapped in a situation where power and privilege tried to crush you, where the system seemed stacked against you, then you know exactly how Madison felt in that moment. Sometimes the quiet ones, the ones who seem most vulnerable, are actually the most dangerous when cornered. Hit that like button if you believe bullies deserve what's coming to them, and stick around, because what happens next will restore your faith in justice. Madison's tactical pen caught the light oddly as she adjusted her grip on the textbooks. Not clipped like a normal student would carry it, but positioned precisely where someone trained in close-quarters combat would want quick access. Her sneakers showed unusual wear patterns at specific angles, the kind that came from practicing defensive footwork for hours. She held her books not casually against her chest, but in what any self-defense instructor would recognize as a natural shield position. Standing at exactly 45 degrees from the elevator door, she'd unconsciously taken the optimal angle for escape or engagement. Preston blocked the elevator control panel with his broad shoulders, his letterman jacket stretching as he crossed his arms. Private elevator time, scholarship trash. No teachers, no witnesses, just us having a little chat about where you belong in this school. Nathan and Jake moved into practiced positions, forming a triangle that would trap any normal victim. But Madison's breathing remained eerily controlled, following a precise 4-7-8 pattern that combat medics used to manage adrenaline. The elevator descended past the 3rd floor, then the 2nd, heading toward the basement level where maintenance rarely ventured, and security cameras mysteriously malfunctioned. The smell of expensive cologne mixed with the metallic taste of fear that should have been emanating from Madison, but wasn't. Instead, she shifted her weight almost imperceptibly, her back finding the corner of the elevator car. Not the panicked scrambling of a trapped animal, but the calculated positioning of someone who understood tactical advantage. Her eyes tracked all 3 threats simultaneously, never fixing on one long enough to lose sight of the others. When Preston shifted left, she micro-adjusted right. When Jake leaned forward, she compensated with a subtle stance change that would allow explosive movement if needed. "You know what I hate most about charity cases like you?" Preston's voice dripped with contempt as the elevator passed the 1st floor. "You walk around here like you earned your spot, like those perfect grades mean something, but we all know the truth. You're here to make the school look diverse for the brochures. Token poor kid getting a handout from families like mine who actually built this place." Nathan pulled out his phone, the latest model that cost more than Madison's mother made in a month. "Speaking of charity cases, we know your schedule, Madison. Every class, every study period, every time you eat alone in that pathetic corner of the cafeteria. Must be hard being here all day while Mommy works night shifts at the hospital. All alone in that tiny apartment every evening." The threat hung in the air like a blade, but Madison's response caught them off guard. "Interesting that you'd mentioned schedules and surveillance," she said quietly, her voice carrying an unusual steadiness. "Are you familiar with Title 18, Section 875 of the United States Code?" Cyberstalking across state lines, especially when it involves threats of physical harm, carries a federal sentence of up to 5 years. But I'm sure your father's lawyers already explained that to you. Or maybe they didn't think you'd be stupid enough to admit it on record. The three boys exchanged glances, uncertainty flickering across their features for the first time. Madison had said, on record, with a specific emphasis that made Nathan lower his phone slightly. Nice bluff, Jake tried to recover their momentum. You think throwing around fake law numbers scares us? My dad owns half the judges in this state. Madison's lips curved in the faintest smile. Protocol 7. She said it casually, like mentioning the weather, but her eyes flicked to her watch with deliberate precision. You have no idea who you're threatening, do you? No idea why a scholarship student would know federal statutes by heart, or why I'm checking the time like I'm waiting for something specific to happen. Threatening a federal witness's family member carries mandatory minimum sentences, Madison continued, her voice gaining a quiet authority that seemed impossible from someone backed into a corner. But that's probably not as interesting to you as learning about your father's recent legal troubles. Preston, didn't your dad's firm just lose 3 major clients after that mysterious audit? Nathan, how's your father's pharmaceutical company handling that FDA investigation into falsified trial data? And Jake, your father must be stressed about those missing education fund millions that the forensic accountants just discovered. Preston's face flushed red, his fists clenching as he stepped forward. You little... He grabbed Madison's collar, slamming her back against the elevator wall hard enough to rattle the whole car. Her books scattered across the floor, but she didn't cry out. Nathan raised his phone again, switching to video mode. This is perfect. Crying scholarship baby getting what she deserves. This'll go viral in the group chat. Jake upended Madison's backpack, stomping on her belongings with deliberate cruelty. A calculator cracked under his heel. Notebooks scattered. Pens rolled across the floor. Yet, through it all, Madison maintained that unsettling calm. When Preston's grip tightened on her collar, she spoke with crystalline clarity. Thank you for the evidence. Every action you just took, every threat you made, every admission of stalking and premeditation, it's all admissible in federal court now. Her hand moved to the emergency button panel, but instead of randomly hitting the alarm, her fingers danced across the buttons in a specific pattern. The rhythm was deliberate, measured. Those who knew Morse code would recognize it as a specialized pattern, not a standard SOS, but something far more sophisticated. The elevator camera, which the boys assumed was broken like all basement-level cameras, suddenly showed a tiny red LED blinking. Madison's smile widened slightly. You know what's beautiful about federal investigations? Madison asked, as Preston drew back his fist. They're like dominoes. Touch one, and 50 fall. Your fathers thought they were careful, thought their contributions to Westfield bought them immunity. But every transaction leaves a trail. Every bribe creates a witness, and every cover-up needs someone to execute it. Someone like Harold Chen, the maintenance supervisor who's been documenting which cameras get mysteriously broken, and why. Someone like Mrs. Patterson, in admissions, who kept copies of every irregular admission pushed through by board pressure. Someone like my father, who spent 6 months inside your father's organizations before we entered witness protection. The fist paused in midair. Preston's eyes widened as the implications hit him like a physical blow. Madison shifted her weight with fluid grace, her stance adjusting from defensive to ready. 30 seconds ago, I activated an emergency protocol, not the standard elevator alarm that brings a lazy security guard in 5 minutes. A direct federal panic button linked to the task force that's been investigating this school and your families for 18 months. In approximately 15 seconds, this elevator will stop between floors for safety protocol. In 30 seconds, tactical teams already positioned in this building will converge on our location. In 45 seconds, your fathers will be receiving visits from federal agents with arrest warrants. But please, continue threatening me. The prosecutor loves video evidence. During the confrontation, Madison had subtly activated her specialized equipment. She pulled out what looked like a standard smartphone, but even at a glance, the boys could tell this wasn't normal student gear. The device was encased in military-grade armor, with biometric locks that required her thumbprint to access. The screen showed multiple recording indicators, audio with legal timestamp authentication, encrypted video streaming, and most unnervingly, a live connection status to something called Quantico-Tactical. Every word spoken, every threatening gesture, every admission of guilt was being transmitted in real time to federal servers with chain-of-custody protocols that would stand up in any court. This is a specialized government security smartphone, advanced law enforcement technology that ensures evidence integrity. Preston's fist began to waver as sweat beaded on his forehead. Nathan had lowered his phone completely, the color draining from his face, as he processed what Madison had revealed. Jake stepped back from the scattered belongings, looking like he might be sick. The elevator suddenly lurched to a stop between the first floor and basement, the emergency lights flickering on with harsh brightness. "She's lying!" Nathan said desperately, but his voice cracked with uncertainty. "She has to be lying. This is just some elaborate bluff to scare us." But even as he spoke, all three boys were remembering things that suddenly made sense. How Madison always sat where she could see all entrances. How she never stayed after school for activities despite her perfect grades. How she'd appeared at Westfield exactly 6 months ago with no previous school records they could find. How she knew things about their families that even they hadn't known. The elevator intercom crackled to life with crisp efficiency. "Federal agents, this is Team Leader Rodriguez. Miss Hayes, are you secure?" The boys froze at the use of Madison's name and the unmistakably official tone. Madison responded without taking her eyes off her three captors. "Secure but contained. 3 subjects as briefed, video evidence uploaded, awaiting extraction." "Copy that. Teams are in position. Basement and first floor are locked down. Subjects should remain calm and comply with all instructions when doors open." The professional, military precision of the communication shattered any remaining hope the boys had that this was a prank or bluff. Preston's legs seemed to lose strength as he released Madison's collar and stumbled backward. We weren't really going to. It was just meant to scare you." Madison straightened her shirt with deliberate calm, her eyes never leaving his. "Attempted assault on a protected federal witness. Conspiracy to intimidate. Obstruction of justice. And those are just the charges from the last 5 minutes. Would you like me to list what your fathers are facing?" The elevator shuddered and began moving again, but slowly, under manual override. Each floor indicator they passed seemed to tick like a countdown to doom. Madison bent to gather her scattered belongings, moving with an economy of motion that spoke of training. She picked up her broken calculator and damaged notebooks with the same steady composure she'd maintained throughout the encounter. "You know what the real irony is?" Madison asked as she placed items back in her backpack. "I actually was just a scholarship kid trying to get an education. My grades are real. My mother really does work night shifts. The only lie was our last name and why we moved here. I could have graduated quietly, let the investigation play out without your involvement. But you 3 couldn't resist. You had to target the quiet girl, had to prove your power. Congratulations. You've just given federal prosecutors the final evidence they needed to take down a corruption network that spans 3 states and involves 24 officials. The elevator descended with agonizing slowness, each second stretching like an eternity. Jake's hands trembled as he pressed himself against the far wall, his earlier bravado completely evaporated. "My dad's the mayor," he whispered, as if repeating it might somehow change their situation. "He controls the police department. He'll fix this." Madison tucked the last damaged notebook into her backpack with methodical precision. "Your father doesn't control federal agents, Jake. He definitely doesn't control the Department of Justice, and he absolutely doesn't control the grand jury that issued sealed indictments 3 days ago. Right now, there are 17 synchronized raids happening across Connecticut. Your father's office, his home, his campaign headquarters, Preston's father's law firm, Nathan's father's pharmaceutical company. Every safe, every hard drive, every document they thought was hidden." The elevator dinged softly as it reached the basement level. For a moment, nothing happened. The doors remained closed, and the silence stretched until they could hear their own heartbeats. Then, with mechanical precision, the doors slid apart to reveal a sight that made all 3 boys' knees buckle. 8 SWAT team members in full tactical gear stood in formation, weapons at ready position. Behind them, FBI agents in Navy windbreakers formed a second line. The basement, which should have been empty save for maintenance equipment and storage, had been transformed into a tactical command post. Portable LED lights eliminated every shadow, and multiple agents held recording equipment to capture every moment. "Preston Whitmore, Nathan Cross, Jake Sullivan." Special Agent Rodriguez stepped forward, his voice carrying the weight of federal authority. "Hands behind your heads, interlace your fingers, drop to your knees. Any sudden movements will be considered hostile action." The laser sights that appeared on each boy's chest emphasized the seriousness of his words. Preston collapsed to his knees first, his designer jeans hitting the concrete with a dull thud. "This is insane! We're minors! We were just talking to her!" But even as the words left his mouth, he knew how hollow they sounded. Nathan followed, tears streaming down his face, as the reality of federal criminal charges at 17 years old crashed over him. Jake lasted longest, his political upbringing making him cling to the delusion of immunity, before a SWAT officer's bark of "now" sent him crashing down beside his friends. Madison stepped out of the elevator with the same controlled calm she'd maintained throughout the encounter. An agent immediately moved to her side, checking for injuries while maintaining security protocol. "I'm fine," she assured him, then addressed Rodriguez directly. Full confession obtained, admitted to stalking, surveillance, and conspiracy. They also confirmed their fathers discussed my family's presence at Thanksgiving dinner, which proves the parents knew about and encouraged the targeting. During the arrest procedure, Madison's specialized equipment continued documenting everything. She pulled out her tactical smartwatch, a device that looked deceptively simple but represented cutting-edge personal security technology. The watch displayed her vital signs, GPS location with sub-meter accuracy, and most importantly, showed the successful transmission of all recorded evidence to multiple secure servers. One touch of the panic button had not only alerted federal agents, but also created an unbreakable chain of custody for every piece of evidence, transmitted simultaneously to FBI headquarters, the U.S. Attorney's Office, and backup servers that would preserve everything even if someone tried to destroy the originals. This is a military-grade personal security smartwatch, advanced protective technology. "You have the right to remain silent," Agent Rodriguez began the familiar litany as zip ties replaced handcuffs on the 3 boys. "Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." The Miranda rights echoed off the concrete walls, while other agents photographed and documented the scene. Preston's face had gone from red to ghostly white. Nathan hadn't stopped crying, and Jake muttered incoherently about his father's connections. Madison watched impassively as they were hauled to their feet and separated for individual processing. Only when Rodriguez approached her did she allow some emotion to crack through her controlled facade. 6 months of their harassment, 6 months of threats and intimidation, while I gathered evidence and maintained cover. Do you know how hard it was not to defend myself when I've been trained since I was 8? Rodriguez's expression softened slightly. Your sacrifice helped us take down a corruption ring that's stolen millions from public education funds. 23 arrests today. Superintendent, 3 board members, 2 judges, multiple business executives. You did good, Madison. Her real name wasn't Madison Hayes. That was the carefully crafted identity created by the U.S. Marshal Service when they placed her family in witness protection. Her father, former DEA agent Michael Chen, had stumbled onto something much bigger than drug trafficking during his final undercover assignment. Financial records that showed massive education fraud, bribery networks that reached from local schools to state capitals, and a systematic scheme to funnel public money into private hands through manipulated contracts and ghost students. The elevator dinged again, and Madison turned to see her father stepping out, flanked by 2 marshals. Even in civilian clothes, Michael Chen carried himself with the bearing of someone who'd spent 15 years in federal law enforcement. His eyes swept the scene with professional assessment before focusing on his daughter. You okay, kiddo? I'm fine, Dad. Madison moved to him, and for the first time since the confrontation began, she allowed herself to be 17, letting him wrap her in a protective embrace. They never had a chance. Everything you taught me worked perfectly. Preston, being led toward the exit, turned back with desperate eyes. This is all a setup. She entrapped us. She deliberately provoked us. Agent Rodriguez shut him down with clinical efficiency. Miss Chen enrolled as a regular student. She never initiated contact with any of you. Every interaction we have on record shows you seeking her out, threatening her, escalating situations. She simply documented your crimes while maintaining her cover. That's not entrapment, son. That's consequences. As the 3 former kings of Westfield Academy were perp-walked past the tactical command station, monitors showed synchronized feeds from across the state. Preston's father being led out of his law firm in handcuffs, his secretary crying in the background. Nathan's father surrounded by FDA agents seizing computers from his pharmaceutical company. Jake's father at a press conference that turned into an arrest, his political career ending in front of rolling cameras. The network runs deeper than we initially thought, Rodriguez told Madison and her father as they watched the feeds. The evidence you gathered revealed connections to 12 other schools, possibly more. This type of systematic corruption doesn't develop overnight. We're looking at decades of stolen funds meant for actual students' education. Madison pulled out her phone, scrolling through secure messages. The other operative families, are they safe? Rodriguez nodded, and something in Madison's expression shifted. The satisfaction of successful mission completion clouded with concern. She opened a particular message thread, her brow furrowing at what she read. On one of the monitors, a news feed showed another private school, this one in California. The reporter was discussing a shocking federal investigation that had just been announced. In the background, barely visible in the frame, stood another teenage girl with the same quietly observant posture Madison had perfected. The girl held her books the same way, stood at the same tactical angle to the cameras, and wore the same style of practical clothing that allowed freedom of movement. Eagle 2 is in position, Madison read from her phone, the concern in her voice deepening. Primary targets identified. Beginning Phase 1. She looked up at her father and Rodriguez. "You're sending her in alone? After what just happened here?" Rodriguez's expression remained professionally neutral. "The California operation has been planned for months. Agent Chen, you know we can't discuss ongoing operations, even with cleared family members." But Madison had learned to read beneath federal stoicism. The tightness around his eyes, the way her father's jaw clenched, told her everything. "There are more schools," she said. Not a question, but a realization. "This isn't 3 states. It's nationwide. How many teenage operatives are you running? How many families in witness protection are being used as bait?" The silence that followed was answer enough. Her phone buzzed with another message, this time from an unknown number, but the coding style was familiar. Another scholarship student at another elite school, checking in with status updates that sounded innocuous but carried deeper meaning. Madison counted the messages. 5 different operators, 5 different schools, 5 different corruption investigations using the same playbook she'd just completed. Michael Chen placed a protective hand on his daughter's shoulder. "We should go. New identities are waiting. The Marshal Service has already prepared your next placement." But Madison shook her head, still staring at the messages, at the California news feed, at the pattern emerging from what they'd thought was an isolated operation. "They're all connected," she whispered. "These aren't separate corruption rings. It's one massive network, and we only uncovered a piece of it." She looked up at her father, then at Rodriguez. "The kids who bullied me, their parents, this whole school system. They're just symptoms. Someone's orchestrating this on a scale we haven't even imagined." Rodriguez's phone rang. His face paled. 3 arrests just flipped. They're revealing a coordinating council above everyone we caught." As they exited, Madison glimpsed the monitors showing nationwide arrests, multiple teenage operatives reporting in. The victory felt hollow. They'd only exposed the surface. Outside, Madison froze before entering the SUV. A woman in an expensive suit watched from the shadows, phone pressed to her ear, then vanished. "Dad, we have a problem." Her encrypted phone buzzed with an impossible message. "The Council knows about Eagle 2. California operation compromised." Rodriguez made frantic calls while Madison's blood ran cold. Another 17-year-old operative was walking into a trap, but this time the predators knew exactly what they were hunting. The network runs deeper than 3 schools.